I can't overemphasize enough to people how intense and how skilled this guy is when it comes to motivating a team, looking at the big picture, seeing the entire board, and having real opinions that end up being 100% spot on despite having a newer hobby experience.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Cards and Content. Today, we've got a special guest. I'm excited to get into this one. We're going to talk with Chris Costa later, one of the co-founders of Card Vault by Tom Brady, one of the biggest and fastest growing card shops in the country. Excited for you guys to hear his story and what they are doing there, and how they're getting to a point where they're basically opening a card shop every single month. So pretty fascinating stuff over there. So excited to get into that. But when we start today's episode with what's on my mind, the one thing today, I can't help but think about like logistics and planning and strategies and some of these things, as the interview with Chris highlights a lot of those things as they learn to build, brand, and expand their card shows or their card shops at scale. Again, like I talked about earlier, monthly at this point. Today, we've got 3 shows in 6 weeks. This is the one thing on my mind. This is really the main bread and butter for me today on this episode. This is the only thing I am thinking about right now, is over the next 6 weeks, later this week when this episode drops, you'll have Fanatics Fest in New York City. We talked about it on last week's episode with Lance, CEO of Fanatics Events. We got to talk with him about the show being during the summer now, not in the end of August, expectations, exclusives, what it's going to be like. We talked all about that. That is coming up this week. Then shortly after that, July 6th is a Sunday, we are running our second Grove City Card Fest. That is a show 5 minutes away from our card shop. You've heard me talk about it a dozen times on these podcasts. And then shortly after that, another 3-4 weeks later, we have the National. The Super Bowl for the sports card hobby is coming. 3 card shows, 6 weeks, on top of everything else we're doing. How are we preparing for these, and how do we get ready? How do we execute these things at the highest level? The one thing I have learned over 17 years in a row of going to the National is it requires an immense amount of preparation. There's so many things that go into it. Now the business has grown, our brand has grown, our content has grown, so much has grown over the last couple years. The preparation for this show has started months and months in advance. We booked hotels and Airbnbs at the end of 2024. We booked these months ago. So now that we're 6 weeks away from the National, now that we've got Fanatics Fest this week, Grove City Card Fest, a show we want to run and to build something here in, the Grove City, the Columbus, Ohio community, there's a lot on my mind. So first and foremost is going to be one, really around the inventory. First thing being is, one of the things I noticed, we observed last year when we left Fanatics Fest, is there was a lot of requests for local teams. Jalen Brunson was definitely the most asked about name all of Fanatics Fest for us last year. I've talked about it in content before that a big piece of Fanatics Fest last year was the wrestling community. Humongous. They showed up and they showed out. I've been very open about that wrestling was huge at Fanatics Fest. You're also in a major sports market with Jets, Giants, Mets, Yankees. Again, you've got Knicks, you've got Villanova. Like, there's Syracuse. I mean, Carmelo's a guy, local guy who played for the Knicks. Jeter, Judge, Eli. You start getting into some of the the local stars of, the card market and who could potentially sell there. And this is one of those things we have been preparing for a little while now. We had Shipshawana and the Midwest Monster, two shows in Indianapolis, or two shows in Indy over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And we've been buying at those shows. We've been buying online, preparing specific inventory for this show. Now, it's not just anything and everything. It is specific stuff that if it weren't to sell at Fanatics Fest, has other uses elsewhere. It's not things we wouldn't normally buy. It's the right, again, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the right kind of content, or the right kind of card, excuse me. So it's very specific, targeted things, but it is a lot of those players. So we've focused heavy on guys like Jeter and Judge. We've picked up some cool stuff of them. Again, Brunson is a guy we will have stuff of. Carmelo, again, Jalen Brunson. We've really put an emphasis on having that kind of stuff. And then also another piece of the inventory that we'll have this time that we definitely did not have last year is the wrestling. I talk about it a lot throughout the vlogs when I travel to card shows to buy. The wrestling community is hands down the most loyal, passionate fan base to me in all of cards. When you sell something, I believe it ends up with a collector. So we've tried to pick up and acquire a good variety of that kind of inventory to make sure that we have the right price points, the big names, hopefully some of the names that will be there as well in attendance. And that was another thing we focused on. Is I remember last year, when Livy Dunn and Jake Paul walked around, when Tom Brady walked around, Gronk walked around, they were looking for very specific things. I think Tom Brady last year bought a card from our friend Kevin, to Captain Online, bought the Tom Brady Joe Montana Elite Passing the Torch Dual Auto. So having Tom Brady cards, if Tom Brady's going to be there, or, I know we have a couple Gronk autos. Just having that specific stuff, one, it's good to have anyways because Gronk autos sell, but two, if an athlete is going to be there, potential opportunity to, for those natural things to happen where, hey, Gronk's walking around looking for his autos or looking for Tom Brady cards, like wanting to have those if those moments should appear. So, more targeted, specific opportunities. Local teams, again, got asked for those last year. Wrestling, it was a big part of the show. We expect it to be a big part of the show this year. And then potential athletes or celebrities in attendance. And then the fourth piece, the last piece of that is just going to be inventory you would want anyway. Stuff that would sell at the National, stuff that would sell in Grove City, for the Card Fest show shortly after. Again, things that have a purpose should they not sell. Liquid cards, right price point. Again, we talk a lot about it on our content, but $20 to $200 is really the sweet spot we see. It sells in shop, it sells on Whatnot, it sells on our website, it sells at shows. That is really our sweet spot. If we can find cards in that range, we feel like it will do pretty well. The case hit market definitely moves. Again, your downtowns, your kabooms, your color blast, your micro mosaics, that kind of stuff also move. So again, having that sweet spot of price point with the liquidity, the liquid cards everybody seems to want right now, pairing all those things together, we feel like we have a really good mix. Grove City is going to be a little different for us. It is definitely about having as much variety as possible. We want that show to really focus on variety. If you listen to the interview with Brad in the past, Brad Beeman, B Sports, the gentleman who helps co-host, co-run the Shipshawana Card Fest with me, Grove City Card Fest, and the Fort Wayne Card Show we run once a year. That's one thing we talk a lot about is a variety in selection. We want to have that. So that'll be a show where we have a Pokemon showcase. We'll have remaining stuff from Fanatics Fest, and then we will have some good, fresh inventory. Again, the nice part about this and the way our business operates is we buy so much on a consistent basis, whether that's online or in shop. There's always fresh inventory. So it makes it nice when you get in moments like these, when you are buying so much, you always have fresh inventory out. So I would say, I'm not going to lie, I don't think Grove City Card Fest will have our best inventory, because I'll get to that in a second, because we have started to build a box for the National, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it's going to have some good stuff. Again, we buy so much, we want to sell, we want to be able to move inventory and offer a again, that wide variety. So I would imagine Grove City is going to have a plethora of things. Again, we also don't have to take it on an airplane to New York like we do with Fanatics Fest. We can just take the inventory 5 minutes from our shop. So it allows us to travel with different inventory that we wouldn't normally have to accommodate for when we have to get on an airplane. And then the National, right? This is the Super Bowl of sports cards. This is anyone and everyone that collects cards is at this event. This is the time. It's dealer setups on Tuesday. That normally has transactions. We've definitely bought for the last 5 shows on dealer setup day. Then you got Wednesday is dealer setup and VIP, and then general admission. So it's basically a full day. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, there's just an infinite number of days to, or infinite number of opportunity to sell. There's someone constantly at the table. We will have this year a booth in both the corporate section, like we did last year, double the amount of space, humongous space this year. And then we'll have a booth on the floor for the first time ever. So the first time ever, we will have a booth in our name where we can go and we can sell what we want to sell. How do you maximize that opportunity? How do you have the best inventory? Well, you got to start saving in advance for that. You've got to start putting inventory back to have a great display. I don't want somebody to come up and see stale, stagnant, undesirable inventory. I want to have good things. I want to make transactions. I want to make trades. I want to, meet new people. That opportunity comes from having a good selection. So this is something we've started weeks or months ago of having inventory back. So when the National comes back, when the Super Bowl is here, we are prepared with inventory. So again, 3 different shows, 3 different thought processes on how we maximize the opportunity at each. And then the same thing works for content, right? It's how do you maximize the opportunity? Content is a big piece of this podcast. It's a big piece of our brand. If you listen, if you watch, that from short form content on 3 to 4 major platforms to full-length videos 3 to 4 times a week. Content is a huge piece of what we do. So how do you prepare for that? You don't want to, we spend a lot of money traveling to these shows. Flights for 9 people, 10 people to Fanatics Fest. Hotels for 10 people in New York. 10 or 11 or 12 people, I think it's 12, in Chicago for a 7-day period. Like, there's a lot of money and expenses tied up in these trips. You've got to be able to maximize. You got to sell inventory. You got to hopefully make money as a business. But the content is a big piece of what we do. So don't want to spend that time, that effort, that energy and go and be unprepared. There's going to be major opportunities in Fanatics Fest, things that you're not going to see as much, at the National. I don't believe, at least we have not got the indication, but I mean, Tom Brady's there. Jaden Daniels is there. Like, these guys are walking around. You saw it last year. Again, I've mentioned 3 of them earlier. I was right next to Amelia Pops when Gronk came over and spiked a slab on the showcase. Saw Jake Paul and Livvy Dunn walk right by. Tom Brady was, walking around constantly. Like, those opportunities don't normally happen at the National. They're not going to happen at Grove City Card Fest. That is not a everyday experience at a card show. It is very specific to Fanatics Fest. What kind of opportunities does that lead to? Are we prepared for that? Right? Having content and ideas ready for when those opportunities arise, that's big. And then again, you're at the second ever Fanatics Fest. This is a show that is now different than it was before. It was in August, end of August. I talked about it with Lance on there, but now it's before the National. It's in the middle of the summer. People are out of school. Families are traveling. Is there more opportunity at this show for content? Is it more attended? What does that look like? So I think it provides a unique experience from a content perspective. It's only the second one, but we've got high expectations. It is Fanatics and Topps putting this on, or Fanatics putting this on. We've got high expectations that this will be a very well-attended show. And then you've got things like show exclusives. This is a big piece of content at the National every year. If you watch our content or anyone's content that makes content, you've got silver packs, you've got gold packs, you've got wrap redemptions, you've got trade-in programs, you've got things that are very exclusive to that show. It's a humongous piece of the National. Massive. We rip gold packs and silver packs and do wrap redemptions. We do that every year, have for a decade plus. Topps has exclusive products dropping at Fanatics Fest. The F1, the Series 2 Topps Baseball, and then I think the third one's like a Cactus Jack type product. So you're going to have multiple exclusives there. Again, that leads to content opportunity. And then at Grove City, again, a different experience than the other two for sure. This is what it is like running a card show. This is dealing with some amazing people in the local community, really trying to build and put Grove City / Columbus, Ohio on the map. We have a platform and want to put this card community on the map. I love the people here, the community here. We're trying to build something really cool in this, in our hometown. So trying to continue to, again, maybe open up a little bit more behind the curtain this time, a little bit more how the show runs and like what goes into that. Last time the air conditioning didn't really work. We can't go into a July 4th weekend show with no air conditioning. I mean, that's unacceptable. How do you improve security? Security is a big thing at shows. We spend a lot of money on security, right? I can't watch every single person's table, but we can do more to try to, have police officers around the floor more. Like we spend a lot of time on that. So like some of those things that are a little bit more behind the scenes of like what really goes into running a 200 plus table show in our community. I think that's something that, we're going to be a little bit more prepared for this time than we might have been the first time. And then obviously the National. Again, everybody is there. This is the biggest event for sports cards every year. I have been to every single one since 2009. It is my Super Bowl. It is one of the highlights of my year. I love it, and I'm grateful to be able to do this for a living. Words cannot describe how much the National means to me. It is amazing. So with a corporate booth, 20 by 20, 20 by 25, massive space. How do you maximize that space for an entire week? Can't sell cards in that area, but how do you maximize content, maximize collabs? How do you make that experience for anyone who wants to, have a conversation, me or anyone on our team, the brand activation piece. How do you really give somebody a great experience in that setting? And then how do you also manage and staff and supply a dealer booth for the first time ever? 2 separate booths, different people, different tasks. For the first time ever, double the space we had last year. Now you also add a dealer booth where you can sell and buy cards. Just a lot of like logistics behind that. So how do you manage the logistics, the staffing, the inventory, and then the content, right? Like, again, this is a major opportunity to really show what goes into, this, again, it's high level production. This is a big time. This is crazy amount of planning and meetings. There's so much that goes into it. It doesn't just happen. So putting all of that together and then, capturing those moments real time while you're there. Again, I think this is one thing we've adjusted over the years. And if you ask some of the big time content creators in the space, they would tell you the same thing. It's how do you maximize that moment and then also publish it immediately? Like, there's a real behind the scenes team. Our content team does an amazing job, but it is a lot of work. These are long days to capture content, edit content in the highest, in our standard, and then put it out on multiple platforms in the blink of an eye. While our team is, me, Brian, who films for me. We're trying to review this content, make sure it looks good, make any changes, while also filming and being in the craziness that is the National. So I would be lying if I told you anything else is on my mind 6 weeks away from what the next, or in the next 6 weeks, what that looks like. Again, you guys can see just from a inventory and a content perspective how crazy it is. Add the logistics and the staffing and the experience and all of those things that go into trying to make this a first class experience for so many. is a challenge, but it's something we are prepared for. And one thing I've learned is you've got to be prepared now, because there's nothing worse than getting in those moments and being behind or not prepared. There's nothing worse than that. We've lived it before, and I think we've got some experiences with 17 years of being at the national that allow us to really be prepared in these moments. So excited for the challenge of the next 6 weeks. But I talked about it in the intro, and that's where I'm going to transition now, is logistics, managing these playbooks, and how you get these things perfect is a perfect segue into the next conversation. This is a special guest today, Chris Costa. Again, I talked about it earlier, co-founder of Card Vault by Tom Brady. He can tell you all about what opening one card shop a month looks like and how they got there. All right, guys, we are back with a very special guest. We've got a friend joining the pod today, Chris Costa, one of the co-founding members of Card Vault by Tom Brady. Chris, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you. Pumped to be on the show, and I've been following it since day one. Been following everything you do. Obviously, you and I have been close for a number of years now, but pumped to officially be on the pod. This is exciting.
Well, I appreciate that. It's yeah, I mean, our connections, like our friendship goes back a ways. We got connected the early days of the Causeway show. Brian and I got to come out there. We've been to a few of your shows, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. It's going to be fun to kind of reminisce on some of those early days, considering where you are now and what you guys are building, in Boston, and I'm sure, neighboring states and then across the country here soon. So excited to get into that and all of the, the big plans you guys have, and, the story. But I want to start more with your story, right? Where, you guys, again, I've touched on it and I will continue to touch on it. You were building something really cool, but how did you get here? Where did Chris Costa come from a card perspective, your entry into cards, and how we honestly got right here?
Yeah, good question. I've been a collector since I was a young kid. 5, 6, 7 years old. I remember, my local hobby shop up here in the Boston area, chasing Nomar Garciaparra rookies and Jason Varitek and all my favorite Red Sox back in the day, and continued to collect, pretty much through and into high school, and then went off to play college baseball. Kind of fell out of it. Very similar story to what a lot of people tell these days, right? You collected as a kid, you fell out of it, and you fell back in love with it. Yep. And that was exactly what happened for me. I found my way back into Bowman baseball in like the 2017, 2018 range, which was obviously an amazing year for those products. I was playing in an amateur baseball league, and a few of the guys on my team were examples of me, but examples that had never stopped collecting. And I heard them talking about entering into these things called breaks in the dugout. And I was like, are you guys talking about baseball cards? And like, yeah, like we're a part of this breaks community. We're on live streams every night. And then sure enough, here I am 2-3 weeks later, and I've got 6 packages a week landing in my house. I've got stacks of cards building on the table, and I had to relearn how to use eBay, how to sell cards on eBay, and how to kind of clear out some of the accumulation that I had. Yep. And then that turned into, well, hey, I am chasing, Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani and Ronald Acuna and Fernando Tatis and all these breaks. I might want to just start targeting their cards and investing in them as players. And that's where the buying and selling and trading of singles started for me. And that's where I started going to shows around the country. And that's where then it turned into me setting up at shows around the country. And I got really close with an amazing network of local dealers, one of which is Mike at MC Sports Cards.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike, and then through Mike, got close with Ryan Bannister at RBI and got close with Matt Fang, Matt Sports Cards. And that became my kind of, we'll call it bubble, which I feel like a lot of dealers in our world have, right? You have your 3, 4, 5 guys and gals that you're in your group chats with and that you're bouncing ideas off of and bouncing comps off of. And
Yep.
that was my bubble.
That's a
And
great
Mike,
bubble. Great bubble.
yeah, it's a great bubble. Mike and that crew were instrumental in me continuing to learn and kind of grow as a dealer and as a collector. And also instrumental in me meeting guys like you and meeting, guys like Andy at Indy Card Exchange and, really kind of opening my world up to a network of people that I think are the most important people in our industry and the most knowledgeable people in our industry. And then, the pandemic hits and we all panic like, hey, what's about to happen? Is this
Yep.
over?
Yep.
And
Yep.
the complete opposite happens.
Yep.
Everybody knows the story. The market goes on a bull run. And, I'm sitting there on the beach one day, and Randy, who is now one of my business partners, we've known each other my whole life. And his business is hospitality and nightlife.
Yep.
And that business at the beginning of the pandemic was closing its doors. It had to, right? It was
Yep.
mandated to close its doors, lay off employees. Meanwhile, I'm telling him about my escapades with baseball cards and basketball cards and hockey cards and Mickey Mantles and Tom Brady's. And the conversation goes from, hey, well, you should start a business out of that. And it's kind of like, well, it is a business, right? It's a hobby. I'm doing it on the weekends and on the side and in my free time. But that conversation quickly turned into, well, hey, why don't we make a business out of it? I now have this free time. I have all these employees that are incredibly talented and resources that are incredibly talented. So that's when we started our first brakes channel.
Yep.
Me being a brakes customer, but having a lot of media and public speaking background, I felt like I could be a breaker, and that's where we
Yep.
started. We started a brake channel that turned into Card Vault. Card Vault turned into Card Vault by Tom Brady, and here we are 5 years later, and we're opening a store a month. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's a there's a lot to unpack there. Again, I think you and I met in the early days of you coming back. Brian and I got to go out to the Causeway show, and that is a show. If I'm not mistaken, you guys run that what a couple times now, like a couple times a year, five times a year in Boston.
Yeah, we're doing it roughly every 5 to 6 weeks. And we try to get one every 2 months, every 3 months in. It's become a really great local show for us to be able to run and offer to the New England collectors. We run it in Big Night Live, which is again going back to Randy, one of Randy and his partners, large hospitality and nightlife venues. It's a live concert venue,
Yep.
and we basically took that space over, built a card show inside of that space, and it's grown and grown and grown and gotten to the point where we're selling out our tables within a matter of minutes. And we offer tables to all of our returning vendors first, and which is appreciated by the local collector community. And we've got a really great curation of vendors with great inventory and provide free autograph guests at every show and try to make it kind of a next generation of local card shop, which I think is something that our industry was lacking. I think there's been a lot of innovation on the card show side in our country and in our industry, but when we first started Causeway, it was definitely new and a new concept, and it's been going strong for the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's Brian was pulling it up here earlier on YouTube, and we actually we went to the show in July of 2021. That was the first time we had gone out there.
Well,
We had filmed out the show. You and I had done a little piece about you in the show and those things, and it was a busy show then. And we've been back since, and that show is definitely not short on people or vendors. I talk about it a lot, and I want to touch back on another point here in a second, but I want to make a quick note that I've been very open on content before that Boston as a whole it's one of my favorite cities to go to. It's got some of the best collectors and people. I love going to the city of Boston. The shows there are great. The people are great. The vendors are great. Everything about Boston is great. So those shows, every time we go out to Boston, it is never disappointing. It's amazing. And I think you can attest to that, with the people you see at the shows.
yeah, Boston's super unique. I think we're widely known as this incredible sports town, and obviously, the Tom Brady's and the David Ortiz's and the Pedro Martinez's and We are very lucky and fortunate to have the sports teams, the sports history that we have. And while there's been an amazing collector community here, some of the, I would say, top collectors, top dealers in the world, we talked about Mike earlier and
Mm-hmm.
Matt and this kind of bubble of collectors in our area. There hasn't been a huge public hobby presence, like some of the cities you would think, like, the Chicago's and the Dallases.
Yep.
And, maybe some of that's due to the fact that they have iconic card shows in their cities. But,
Yep.
as a city, I think we early on saw the opportunity to say, hey, there's room for a real card shop experience here. The collector community is strong. The sports heritage is massive. Would a card shop make sense for us to start thinking about building? And that's where the idea of Card Vault was born, and where we decided to launch our first location at Gillette Stadium.
Now, before we get into more of that, because that is going to be a big piece of this, like it's fun for me to talk about just here, just because it is so cool. So I'm excited for people to hear it. But I want to touch on one more thing on your original point, because you've brought him up a few times. What was it like early on? Because I think this will provide some value to the listener around, the relationship around the network, around the bubble. You mentioned Ryan Bannister and Andy at Andy Card Exchange, Andy Albert. Those were obviously people that were instrumental in my journey as well. You mentioned Matt Fang. You mentioned Mike Kantz. Neither one of those two guys are huge on social, so maybe not everybody knows them. But those two, are major players in the game and are some of the smartest people I've ever met in sports cards. They're A+ human beings as well. Hopefully can have them on the pod here in future episodes, because I think they have an incredible story to share and are, again, just super knowledgeable. But
Yeah.
what was that like in your journey on, into the industry, with guys like that helping, lead the way for you and just give you insight that, is probably not something you can get from, like, anybody and everybody.
Yeah. I've said it a lot in the past. I haven't said it enough recently. Mike and Matt and Bannister and Andy, like, those guys, if they didn't exist, or if I wasn't able to build a relationship with them, or if they didn't let me build the relationship with them that I built, Carvault would probably not exist. And for me as a collector, right, I'm chasing Bowman, and I start buying Fernando Tatis first Bowmans. I start buying Vlad Guerrero Jr. first Bowmans in 2019. And as I'm chasing them, I constantly found myself on the MC Sports Cards eBay page. And I'm then I'm finding myself in awe of all of the cards Mike is posting on a daily basis, all of his mail days. And I'm just like, this guy is a machine. Sure enough, I find myself buying a card from his page. We connect, and we meet in person to do the deal. We meet in a parking lot in a Walmart in New Hampshire. And it was my first opportunity to meet him, and I was blown away at how young he was. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you're telling me this 20-something-year-old kid has built this card empire and has become one of the most respected dealers in the world and has built an amazing business. And obviously, Mike's business has kind of transformed over the years. He's now become, one of, if not the largest consignment, dealers on eBay.
Yep.
Or consignment shops on eBay. But I've seen that entire progression, right? When I met Mike, his eBay was just his inventory. He was just selling his own cards, which was wild to think, because there was so much. And that's when he started getting into consignment. So now it's more of a well-run business, or a running business. But once I connected with Mike, he let me in, which I've always been appreciative of. And Mike and I have become incredibly close friends over the years. And that, like I said earlier, has led to close relationships with Bannister, who he's best friends with, and then closer relationships to Andy by being at the shows together, and then Matt, who was another card prodigy at the time, this super young, not even, in his first year of college, but doing massive deals. Like, I was enamored by this crew, And they brought me in. They let me in. Mike used to let me take a showcase or two at the Dallas show with him, and he'd let me take a showcase or two at the National with him, and then that turned into 3 showcases and 4 showcases.
Yep.
And I can't emphasize it enough for all the listeners, right? When you're getting into cards, if you're in cards, if you're working your way into bigger types of cards, the people you surround yourself with and the people that you decide to trust as your inner circle, because that's how this industry works. Everybody's
Yep.
got an inner circle. But the people you surround yourself with and the people you put in that circle are so important. So choose them wisely. Appreciate them, because those group texts, those late night texts, like, hey, what do you think of this one? I'm thinking about going after this card. What are your thoughts? A second, a third, a fourth opinion, different perspective, and different lenses is what makes people successful in this industry.
Yep.
And, without Mike, without Matt, without Ryan, without Andy, without Chris Hack and Seth,
Yep.
up in Vermont,
Yep.
who are also 2 of my favorite people on planet Earth.
Yep.
None of this happens because I probably stumble more than I succeed along the way. And then, with that, they've become incredibly, incredibly close friends of mine, at my wedding. And, like that's what's so amazing about our industry. That's what's amazing about the hobby is we get and have the opportunity to build these circles of people that we trust and, hold as business relationships, but they also very quickly become personal relationships and really important personal relationships. So that would be my advice. Like for anybody getting into cards, anybody that's in cards looking to continue to progress, obviously watching the Card Collector 2 content and all the other amazing influencers out there, that's a help. But the people that you're talking to in real time on a daily basis is bar none the most important thing.
For sure. Yeah, I couldn't echo what you've said anymore. It's spot on. It matters so much. I mean, I've known Matt and Mike for a long time. I mean, it'll be fun to have Matt on here at some point to talk. Like, Matt and I met on Instagram early days. I was on an IG in 2013, and Matt and I would FaceTime or call each other 2014 and talk about Jimmy G and Derek Carr and Blake Bortles and again, I don't know how many years older than I am than Matt, 8, 9. So he was young, and I mean, again, you talk about card prodigy, Matt knows his stuff. But again, at the end of the day, I learned, and you say the same thing, I learned a lot from those 4 people, but just who they are as human beings, again,
Yeah.
it just matters so much. They do things the right way. Their word means everything. They're just good people, and I think that was so important for me early on, and
Yeah.
it sounds like it was, instrumental in you, and, but it also is what you've done with that opportunity, and that's what I want to get into next. You got good advice. You started with the Causeway. You get connected to Card Vault. When we were out there in 2021, Card Vault wasn't open at the time, at least not the one at the Garden. You were working on it. Now you have multiple. What did the early days of Card Vault look like when you tried to get open? From the first one to multiple, and why those locations? I'm fascinated by this idea that you've got a card store in Gillette, TD Garden, other locations, and now Tom Brady's involved. So I'm really curious about the origin story of what will quickly become and is become one of the biggest card shop names in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a really interesting ride. I mentioned we started as a live stream platform, right? We started as a breaks company.
Yep.
And once we realized that this world of entertainment, hospitality, nightlife, and sports cards came together and made sense, right? We started to see that it made sense and was something unique. We thought to ourselves, well, why don't we do everything? Why aren't we also providing an amazing experience in a brick and mortar perspective? And why aren't we also able to offer grading services and give people a place to buy, sell, and trade, and bring a lot of our athlete friends to a specific place to have an experience? So that's where the first location came to us. And we've also had it as a side conversation. We've had a really great relationship with the Kraft family for many years. And so the Kraps obviously own the Patriots. They own Gillette Stadium and they own Patriot Place. So it was a very easy decision for us to say, well, card shops next to ballparks, arenas, and stadiums could be something new and unique.
Yep.
And that's where we decided to test it. So we landed on Patriot Place. It's unique in the sense, or at the time it was unique. We're seeing this start to happen across the country now in ballparks, arenas, and stadiums. But at the time, it was unique where it was really one of the only or one of a few major stadiums with full retail around it, full retail and food and beverage and all of that.
Yep.
And Patriot Place it turns out to be kind of the major shopping center for that region of New England. So the concept of venue adjacent ballparks, arenas, and stadiums was born. And that's where Card Vault by Tom Brady, or excuse me, Card Vault started, not Card Vault by Tom Brady yet. And once we had success there, and once we saw that we had the ability to build a community there, and once we saw people respond to the experience we built, we very quickly said, you know what? We think this can be scalable. And nobody at that point in time, right? There was only really one or two multi-store operators in the country at the time, but nobody had taken the idea or the concept of a card shop and said, how do we build a national chain? And that's what we set out to do from day one. From day one, Card Vault was going to be a venue adjacent focused. It doesn't mean every location we have would be next to a ballpark, but venue adjacent focused in every major city in the U.S. Obviously, that gets sped up and a little bit more exciting when Tom comes in and kind of brings his world and brings us into his orbit. But from the start, venue adjacent. And that's where we then opened at Foxwoods Resort Casino in Connecticut, America's or the world's largest resort casino. We then opened our third location at TD Garden, which is right at the entrance of the arena.
Yep.
And then Tom came on board. And that's led to the store a month. How do we pour gasoline on this already existing plan, but do it in a much faster, much shorter time frame and execute at a really, really high level.
Yep.
But that's where we are. Yeah, it's been a nutty ride. Only through 5 shops, right? We have 5 shops today. We'll have 6 shops next month and 7 the month after and 8. And at some point, we'll get to like a shop and a half a month and we'll start to speed up the timeline. But executing, building a plan around how do we execute, making sure you have the right process and people in place to do so. We're doing something that's really never been done. So sure, there's a lot of learning along the way. There's a lot of stumbling along the way, but we've come up with what I think is a playbook, no pun intended, that gets us to a finish line, which we don't know what that is. Could it be 100 stores? Could it be more? But it's been a nutty ride, man.
Yeah, so you said it, like, you're doing something so unprecedented. Like, I mean, you've opened, what, 3 in the last 90 days?
Yeah, we've actually done 2 in the last 2 months, but in the course of 90 days, we'll have opened 3, yeah.
So what was, like, how did that happen, though, where Tom gets involved? Because we were out there in 2021, the TD Garden store is not open. You talked about it earlier. This market goes on this bull run. Card shows are crazy. You've got COVID. You've got the market ebbing and flowing. And then, like, what was it, late 2022, early 2023, market, definitely adjusts. There was certainly some declines in the market. Again, it's really kind of like correcting itself from this crazy run. You've got multiple stores open. Now Tom Brady's involved. Like, how does Card Vault go to Card Vault by Tom Brady over, I mean, how did this happen? How long did it take?
Yeah, great question. It's such an interesting story. So I mentioned the Crafts, right?
Yep.
And our relationship with the Crafts and our origin stories at Gillette Stadium, that obviously plays a big part in this. But we also have done a really good job of building amazing relationships with our partners, meaning all of the manufacturers, all of the distributors, Topps and Fanatics, Panini, Upper Deck, all of the distributor networks. So, those relationships are obviously instrumental to anybody in our position trying to grow a business, but they obviously also open up doors where we see opportunity. And Tom being so close with Fanatics, and Michael being so close with Tom and so close with Ruben, or excuse me, and so close with Kraft,
Yep.
and us being so close with Kraft and also having history with Tom. So I'll caveat this. Ed, who is one of my partners, has been in the hospitality and a leader in hospitality in New England for the last 30 years.
Okay.
He owned a outdoor venue in Quincy, which is the exact same neighborhood Tom lived in his rookie year. And that is where Tom used to hang out on the weekends his rookie and sophomore year. And so Ed and Tom got to know each other years back. Ed is also extremely close with RKK and the Kraft family. And then you bring our relationship with Fanatics, who is obviously incredibly close with Tom. Somewhere along the way, the worlds merged. And, obviously Tom's presence in our hobby has grown and grown and grown over the last couple of years. Tom's importance to our hobby has been huge for many years, but Tom's
Yep.
presence in our hobby has grown over the last couple of years to the point where he's actually a collector, which we caught wind of early on. I think a lot of people are now attuned to that. Obviously, he owns a card shop now, but Tom's a collector. And when we learned that, the idea of like, hey, a what could a relationship look like, or what could the business look like if we brought in a partner like Tom? And Tom very quickly was extremely interested in what we were doing. He knew what we were doing already, which was flattering and exciting for somebody like me who grew up in Boston and watched all 7 championships. And to hear Tom Brady is aware of what you've built and watching what you've built was like okay, that's crazy. But then we really realized that he was interested in our business. I would say probably 6 months before we announced. So it was probably a 6-month process of conversations and strategy and planning and conceptualizing things. And then about exactly a year ago, today, we sat down for the first time in person, and started really hammering out what a business plan would look like. What's amazing about Tom, and again, you sit down across the table from Tom Brady, having been a Patriots fan your whole life, and it was a surreal moment for sure. But what I was taken aback by was how quickly you realize how sincere Tom is, how honest he is, the way in which he engages with you in conversation, and the level of eye contact is so intense. And it's very easy to then all of a sudden get out of this, oh my God, it's Tom Brady mindset. And you're having a conversation, and you're having a very thoughtful conversation with somebody that actually has a lot to bring to the table. Not just with his name, not just with, his celebrity, but with his experience, with his mindset, with his approach. And that's where the conversation started. And then, yes, about 6 months later, we landed on what we thought a proper plan was, where we felt Tom fit in as one of our partners as far as like we think about our business as swim lanes, right? So I kind of oversee and operate the business as a whole. But I have certain areas of our business that I'm hyper-focused in, and then I have partners or VPs or directors that I trust to own other areas of our business, and we do the same thing with Tom. So it was a crazy process, a crazy ride, a lot of, oh my God, is this happening moments along the way. But yeah, it came together, and one of the things that I think is super important for people to realize, because it's the truth, is this is not a Tom Brady spokesperson type thing. This is not a Tom Brady brand ambassador type thing. Tom is an operator in our business. Tom is constantly looking at the numbers, asking about, hey, can I help here? Is this a relationship that I might be able to help the business with? What are we thinking about our Fanatics Fest setup? What are we thinking about our national setup? How can I weave myself into those plans? What content can we do that's fun and creative? Sales, promos, specials, like he's involved at that level, which I don't think people really understand and grasp, which I think is the most important and the most exciting part of everything we're doing right now.
That's crazy. It's hard to, hard to believe. Like we have meetings here, and I'm like, what are we doing for the national? Like we've got a booth in the corporate area, we've got a show floor booth, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like who's staffing doing these things? I just can't imagine being in a meeting room where Tom Brady is like, guys, what's our national booth gonna look like? What's our Fanatics Fest booth gonna look like? Just hard to believe the
I don't
greatest
get it.
quarterback to ever play in the NFL is sitting there having conversations, just talking about how he's gonna, have a booth at Fanatics Fest in June. That's
Crazy.
absolutely crazy. What
And
has it been like? I mean, obviously, I grew up a Patriots fan here in Columbus, Ohio. You and I have been friends, so like we know each other. But like you're working with like the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Like, what has it been like working with Tom? While you're also trying to scale and grow into one of the, if not the biggest card shop name in the industry.
yeah, it's hard to explain sometimes, because there is the element of, oh my God, I've been texting with Tom Brady for the last 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
the oh my God, Tom's FaceTiming me, everybody shut up. Or the oh my God, there are those moments, and
Yep.
they're fleeting, right? We've developed a relationship, which is crazy to say, I'll admit. We've developed a relationship. We have a working relationship. I would say, he's become a friend of all of ours, just through working together and building towards one singular mission. We say one team, one dream. And so, like, I don't want to sit here and pretend like, oh, yeah, no, we're cool. Tom's cool. Everything's fine. No big deal. Like, it's a big deal. And it's a big deal for me.
Yep.
And being on phone calls and in text threads and in meetings with Tom is obviously amazing. And, not just because he's Tom, but because he has a real skill set in
Yep.
this world. And, while he may be a newer collector, right? He hasn't been doing it as long as you and I and a
Sure.
lot of the guys that we've talked about. He understands business. He understands team
Yep.
and teamwork. He understands how to motivate people, which I can't overemphasize enough to people how intense and how skilled this guy is when it comes to motivating a team, looking at the big picture, seeing the entire board, and having real opinions that end up being 100% spot on, despite having a newer hobby experience, if that makes sense. So,
Yep.
while it's been incredible as a fan, it's also been remarkable to watch as a business owner and a business operator and a business person, because you see a totally different approach. One that I think, a lot of companies, large companies, corporations, they always prioritize hiring athletes, right? They want to hire athletes because they understand teamwork, they understand leadership, they understand goal-oriented frameworks.
Yep.
When you bring in the greatest of all time, it's that on a total other level that you can't even imagine. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's like nothing I've ever seen. So that has been the holy crap moment for me.
Sure.
Yes, the oh my God, I'm now talking to Tom on a weekly basis is
Yep.
a holy crap moment in and of itself.
Yep.
But watching him work and watching him care about the business that we started and the amount that he cares about it is mind blowing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected you to say anything less, honestly. Like it's cool as like a Pats fan, like you're a Boston guy. Like it's got to be so cool, but to sit and to learn, like you're learning as well, right? Like to learn from a guy that is a winner, team-focused guy, like just
Yeah.
just to be a fly on that, fly on the wall in those meetings sounds, incredible. But, the name of this podcast is Cards and Content, right? So I do love to talk about the content piece. You are, I don't know the entire story, but like your dad was, I don't want to
Yeah.
misspeak, but like your dad has definitely a background. Is it like TV, radio?
Yep.
Like you come from, as long as I've known you, you've been super comfortable on camera, talking, public speaking. You mentioned it earlier. So you're super comfortable in that space. You bring a guy like Tom Brady in. you've been doing a lot more content, kind of that day in the life, behind the scenes type stuff. What has it been like, one, just building the content for the brand, and then working with, the GOAT to produce,
Yeah.
content? What is the content, aspect
Yeah.
of the business been like?
Yeah, you're spot on. So I grew up. My father is a Hall of Fame broadcaster in New England. Has hosted the large morning radio show in the city for the last 35 years.
Wow.
Has also won several Emmys and hosts television shows on Nesson, which is the network that the Bruins and Red Sox are on,
That's awesome.
as well as PBS and local. He's a media legend, a media legend in the New England region for sure. And I grew up in radio stations, and I grew up in TV studios, and I grew up in production meetings, 5, 6, 7 years old, when there wasn't a babysitter, and I had to sit in the green room, and so that was my world, and ended up going to school, to play baseball, but majored in communication, TV, radio, broadcast, and I thought that was going to be my life post college, and I'd go down to some town in the southeast and cover a local, single A baseball game, and work my way up into a triple A team, and then work my way up into a major market, Anchor Sports Center. Like, that was always my path that I had in my head.
Yep.
And who knew that, opening a pack of baseball cards after I got back from college, and chasing guys like Vladdy and Tatis and Acuna and Otani would pull me out of that path and send me down this one. So, but that is my background. That is, where I come from. It's in my quote unquote blood, but I grew up around it, and I've always been comfortable and always been, pulled into my father's shows and a part of my father's radio show. And I
Yep.
still go in every couple of weeks and become kind of like a guest co-host with the team. And that has always been something we've leaned into as a company, right? We started as a break channel. I was our first breaker. I, like to think of myself as talent from that perspective, and we leaned into that early. But then
Yep.
we also ran into the harsh reality of, well, we're now building a real business and a big business. I have to balance the business owner and operator with talent and on-camera talent. And
Yep.
we've, to your point, been able to get back into the me on camera more, more of a face of the company lately, because we've been able to grow and hire amazing people and have a lot of the day-to-day stuff owned and handled in swim lanes, like I talked about, which
Yep.
frees me up. There's not much free time, but it frees me up to be able to have a videographer like you have attached to my hip, and making sure we're getting everything on camera. And then you bring Tom in. Tom is obviously a talent in a
Yep.
bunch of different ways, on field and off. He's now one of the largest, if not the largest, broadcaster in the world. 30 million eyeballs on a Sunday, and has developed a real talent on camera. And I think people should consider and look back at Tom's kind of path over his first season as a broadcaster. If you go from the first game to the last, the improvement and like the focus on improvement is so incredible to watch. And I think that speaks to a lot of just his character, which everybody understands. Like, he's a maniacally focused human being. But now that Tom is here and Tom has his media resources, we've been able to, I think, do something and start to create something really special, where we have the ability to capture what we're doing on a daily basis, give people a look behind the scenes. We just launched our vlog, Behind the Vault, which we're dropping every week on YouTube. And that's more just designed like, hey, we want to give everybody a look behind the curtains on what it is to build this thing. Like,
Yep.
what are we doing on a daily basis? It's very easy to see our Fanatics Fest setup and our national setup and, the grand opening events of stores. But what does it take to get there? What does it take to build our national plan? What does it take to open a new store? All of the back end stuff that nobody sees, I think, is a story that has yet to be told. I think there's obviously amazing storytellers out there, you included for sure. But I think a lot of people value your expertise when it comes to cards and the hobby and the industry, which they should.
Yep.
But I also think we have a unique perspective or a unique opportunity
Yeah.
to tell the behind the scenes story of, what does a marketing meeting look like in our company? What does a operations planning meeting look like in our company? What does it look like to open our warehouse and distribution center? And what does it look like to have a production meeting? All of those things, I think, are stories that we're looking to tell. Then you pile Tom and his ability to then insert himself into our content on top of that. I think
Yep.
we potentially have something, really unique and special on our hands. And yes, to your original question, and to make a long story short, content has now become a huge part of our plans because I think there's a really compelling story to tell.
Yeah, I think that again, you hit it on, the nail on the head. It's the content piece. Like we struggle with that here, where it's like you can show what it's like buying and selling at a show. You can do a little like day in the life of a card shop. Like you can do those things. But I think what you're doing is so instrumental in the industry, where it's and I'm fascinated to watch it. Is like, how do you go from, how do you open 3 stores in 90 days? Like remodeling a card store here, is a lot. Yet alone opening 3 stores in 90 days,
Yeah.
bringing in the GOAT on top of, running a breaking business on top of Fanatics Fest and the National, the 2 biggest card events of the entire year. There's just so many moving pieces. That is something that it's like, I commend you guys on, and I'm excited to watch and to learn, because it's those things are not like those things are incredibly hard to do and are not something you see a lot of in the industry. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons I did some of the like building a card shop series we did when we did it. Is this is not stuff out there for like people to really see on like how you do these things. You just see people opening card stores and opening packs and getting mail days, but like you don't really see how those things happen.
Yeah.
I think that is so important, and I think you guys
Yeah.
are killing it. I'm excited to watch it. And I
Yeah.
think I give you a lot of credit for it. Is like, you're so comfortable on camera. It's, I watched some of the clips yesterday you put, with you nearly dying by a bird, crossing the street, near the garden. Yeah, it's good. It's funny. And I think it's cool to see. And I think it's something, the industry will take well to, because I think it's going to be great.
Well, I love that we're seeing more of it, right? And I think, listen, the reason people love Ryan Card Collector 2 is because you're an expert when it comes to our industry. But you also took the opportunity when you had it to take people behind the curtains of what you were experiencing when you remodeled your shop, which I don't know the numbers, but I venture to guess that content did really well. Would be my assumption, because for me as a collector, that's what I want to watch. I want to watch how Ryan does what he does.
Yep.
And I think we're seeing parts of this kind of spread out. We saw Rob at Burbank give us a little bit of a look inside of that process of the new store kind of coming to life. We saw Jeff take us behind the scenes a little bit of what he was doing at Cards HQ when that was getting going. And I love that stuff. And I think that's certainly something that we'll do. We'll show people, hey, what does it take to open this particular store?
Yep.
But really the story we're telling is, hey, what does it take to build this company? And the people and the characters and, the people that it takes to build it, right? And that's without a doubt, and I know you would agree with this, the people are the most important part of this whole thing. No matter what business you're doing in our industry, the people are all that matter. People that you can trust and people that you can rely on to be able to put them in positions that are important and critical to your business is the only way, not just to run one shop, 2 shops, 3 shops, but to do something like we're doing, where I need to trust and rely on 50, 60, 70 people a day
Yep.
to do their job. And I do trust them to do their job. And that's the only way we do what we're doing is to have those people in place, so that I can, sit in front of a camera and almost get killed by a bird on Causeway Street.
For sure. I've learned so much on this, and I think everything you say, I'm like, yep, agreed, man. It's you speaking the truth, and I think that's one of the reasons the content piece will do so well for you guys, and has done so well, is just like you're so authentic. Like that is who you are on and off camera, and I think that shows, and I think that's gonna just absolutely crush them. So I'm excited to continue to watch those vlogs, see where they go, and just really see behind the scenes as you guys build an empire. Last question here before I give my final thoughts. Quickly, you've opened 2 in 2 months. You're going to open 3 in 90 days. What's the next 12 to 18 months look like for Card Vault by Tom Brady?
Yeah. We are very confident in our ability to execute at a store a month. And I think that sounds insane to everybody. But the reason is, again, going back to the people, right? We have our own internal construction team. They self-perform 99% of what we do in these new stores. I have an operations team built out with a playbook. We have a hiring process and a hiring curriculum, and we have a training process and a training curriculum. So there's so many pieces that come into play when you think about opening one store, let alone opening 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, 100, whatever it is.
Yep.
So I have an operations team. We have Frank, who's our VP of operations. We have Jesse, who oversees inventory for the whole company. We have Smitty, who a lot of people out there know.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And we have kind of this rotation that we've built where construction team goes on site, builds to our plan and design. We then send a 3-person team into that market for anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. Somewhere in that period of time, we do career days, hiring events. We identify talent in the market, and we bring people in and start building a roster of teams. Store manager, assistant manager, key holders, store associates, all that good stuff. And then over that 4 to 6 week period, it's hands-on on-site training. So we've got these guys in market for that period of time, working with the team, helping them understand our inventory process. How do you receive product? How do you transfer product to another store when I put a request in for them to move something somewhere else? How do we receive grading submissions? Well, how does our POS system work? How do we merchandise our shelves? So we're hands-on for a period of time so that they can watch and shadow. And then Smitty, Jesse, and Frank come home. We send a 2-person team from our operations team right now. That's Jack and Aldo. And they spend another 2 to 3 weeks on site. So the new store team is getting a 6-week crash course on Card Vault by Tom Brady and sports cards. So that is how we get the teams on the ground up to speed. Meanwhile, with that rotation, Frank, Jesse, and Smitty are then able to go and move on to the next city. And our construction team has moved on to the next city from there. And that team is able to turn a store around, depending on the condition of the space we're taking on, anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, which is crazy. And we rinse and repeat that process, and our team has done an incredible job. And we're going to grow that operations team so we can rotate in and out more people and give people more time back at home. But it's been working. The playbook works. We're obviously going to make tweaks as we go.
Yep.
But a store a month in perpetuity until I'm very old and gray is the plan. And I'm very, very excited and confident in our team from what I've seen and our ability to execute on that plan. And then you start to think, well, hey, how do we manage our inventory at that scale, which is a whole nother conversation. But very excited to say we've just opened our first warehouse and distribution center so that we have the ability to provide product to all of our locations around the country. My store staff can basically send a note internally through our communication platform to say, hey, we're light on Dallas Mavericks singles, Lakers singles, Chicago Bulls, New England Patriots, and our team can pick, pull, label, and ship day of. And provide those stores the product that they need so that the stores are full and they have and give the experience that our brand is designed to give.
You make it sound so easy, but I'm sure it is anything but that. And I can't imagine. I think one store is a lot, yet alone one store a month. So props to what you guys have done so quickly. And I'm excited to sit back here, 12 months before Fanatics Fest and the National in 2026 and say, hey, Chris, how's it going? Because I have a
We'll
feeling
do
it's
a 1 year checkup.
yeah, a little 1 year checkup when you have, 15 or so stores. But got to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you, spending so much time with us so far. Before I go, I want to ask one last question. I end all of
Please.
the episodes with. If you were starting over today, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
Buy Mickey Mantle 1952. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Great advice.
Yeah, no, I think trust your gut. I think one of the things that I've learned along the way, and this is for anybody, this isn't like a, hey, trust your gut, Chris, you know what you're doing. Every single one of us has a unique intuition, and has the ability to kind of see the board and see the field, even when you don't realize you're seeing it. So I think the advice that I have started to give myself more often recently, but wish I was giving to myself earlier on, was trust your gut and go with it. And I'm not saying that as far as, trust your gut, hit the buy button on eBay, or trust your gut, hit the buy button on whatnot. That's not
Yep.
what I'm saying. What I'm
Sure.
saying is, when you're thinking about making a change, when you're thinking about making a big decision, when you're thinking about, hey, should I hire this person, or should we go to this store? Should we use this space? Should we change the way we're doing this? If your gut is telling you yes or no, trust your gut. Because I think we all have this unique ability, and especially us as collectors, we know our space in such a unique and intrinsic way that not really anybody else has. We have such a unique industry that requires so much skill and knowledge and expertise, even at the novice level, where I think we have a unique ability as collectors to trust our guts more so than anybody else. So trust your gut.
I love it. And buy 52 Tops Mickey Mantles.
And buy 52
not
Tops Mickey
financial
Mantle.
advice, but that would have been good tip to know when if you restarted.
It would have been a good tip back in 2020, that's for sure, man.
Now, you guys, last thing, just to plug you guys are everywhere. You're growing very quickly. If people want to find you on anywhere online, where can they find Card Vault by Tom Brady?
Yeah, so me personally, my Instagram is at It's Chris Costa. The business is at Card Vault by Tom Brady. We're intertwined in a lot of different ways, but on Instagram you can find us at Card Vault by Tom Brady, and then Card Vault by Tom Brady on YouTube if you want to check out our weekly episode of Behind the Vault as you kind of watch this whole thing unfold.
Man, I love it. Cannot wait to watch it. Cannot thank you enough for coming on and spending some time and giving so much insight to what it has been like to from the early days to now and building a massive card empire. So thank you, Chris, so much for the time.
Thank you, man. I can't emphasize it enough. We're friends and all of that, but on camera, how impressed I am by you and everything you do, and how much I respect you and appreciate our friendship. And I think it goes. I don't want to understate how impressive it is to watch from outside what you're doing. And the following that you have is so well deserved, and everybody following you is following you for a reason, because you're honest, you're an expert, and you do it the right way, and you always have. So I'm proud to call you a friend. I'm proud to call you a friend for forever as we go here and look back a year from now and see where both of us are. But thank you for having me on, man. I will see you on the road. And thanks to Brian back there for everything he does.
Appreciate it, brother.
See you guys.
All right. Shout out to my guy Chris for coming on. An absolutely amazing person. Love talking with him. I said it on the pod or the interview when we were talking, but when I left or when I was listening, just everything he said, I resonated with a lot of the people he's associated with, the way he's done it. It makes a lot of sense, and it's really not a surprise that they're having so much success, and I would assume will continue to have a lot of success. When you get into these weeks with, it's about to get crazy. Fanatics Fest, Grove City Card Fest, the National. Product doesn't stop coming out. They don't stop making product. So a lot of other things to kind of loop into the logistics and the strategy of the business, because, I mean, hear what some of the products coming out this week are. Contenders Optic Football. It's a big time football release. You're going to have on card Contenders in that chrome auto, the chromium Contenders type auto. Penix, McCarthy, BTJ, going to get cracked ice, Contenders, chrome cards. Definitely a cool product, really breaker friendly. I think it's only got 7 or 8 cards in it. Then you got Donruss Baseball. You've got Score Football 2025. This is going to be our first look at guys like Genty, Travis Hunter, Shadur Sanders. I believe all 3 of those guys signed for Panini. I think Tet McMillan does. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, couple Buckeye running backs. Doesn't appear to be Cam Ward. Doesn't appear to be Jackson Dart. But we do still have some big names if Hunter and Genty both sign in there. I think those will be 2 of the more popular guys from this class. They're not going to be in pro uniforms usually. Well, I shouldn't say not. In the past, they have not been. I would be surprised if Panini had them in pro uniforms already. But regardless, our first look at 2025 football will be out later this week. So excited to rip that. I definitely got to rip that. You're going to have some Buckeyes in there. My guy, Jack Sawyer. You'll have Will Howard. Hopefully have these guys. I mean, they're going to have rookie cards in there. Hopefully they all have autos. But Jack Sawyer, Will Howard, Emeka, Travion, Quinshon, Lathan Ransom, Denzel Burke, the list goes on. I mean, Buckeyes had 13 or 14 guys drafted. So excited for that one. Topps Inception Baseball and 24-25 Select Basketball. Upper Deck World of Sports Volume 1, Topps G League Basketball, Upper Deck Parkhurst Champions Hockey. So a bunch of product coming out while preparing for Fanatics Fest, then to come back and prepare for Grove City Card Fest here shortly. It may be the summer. We're wrapping up, the finals. A couple leagues are about to end. Baseball's in the swing of things, and football's not really doing a whole lot. But that doesn't mean the card market is slowing down. It's getting ready for a crazy couple of weeks. So I'll stop talking for now. That is all I got. Shout out to those of you who are listening, wherever you may listen. Appreciate all the support. But for now, that is all I got. Peace, guys.